biased opinion. For the class, I don't think we're going to have a class in Ramadan, inshallah. We'll take a break. We'll take a break, inshallah. So I think next week will be the last one before Ramadan. Is that the plan? Inshallah. Okay. So thank you for reminding us about that. Okay. We can start? الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. All praises due to Allah, the one true God, the Lord of everything in existence. We testify that He's the only one deserving of worship, and we testify that Muhammad is a servant and His messenger. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. We begin by asking Allah to bless the Messenger Muhammad, to honor and compliment him, and to shower him with protection and grace, along with his family and his righteous followers, as he did with Ibrahim, his family and righteous followers in the past. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. We ask you, Allah, to teach us what benefits us and to allow us to benefit from the things that we learn and to increase us in knowledge. Allahumma zidna ilma. Allahumma a'inna ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. We ask you, Allah, to help us to remember you and to mention you at all times, to be grateful to you for all your blessings and to worship you in the best of ways. So we have another session of the prophetic stories, illustrations of life, where we're covering specific events from the life of the Messenger and trying to extract lessons and morals so we can apply them in our daily lives. And over the last few weeks, we've been speaking about things related to the masjid, the mosque, the community center, considering people's conditions, considering people's circumstances. Now, we spoke about a Muslim man, and that's a representation of a big category of people who are workers. They labor during the day. And how the religious leadership, specifically the imam, should be considerate of the people's state and the people's conditions. Today we're going to speak about a non-Muslim person, because society is not only made out of Muslims, especially the prophetic society. There was multiple groups of people in that location, and we find ourselves in a similar situation as well. Now, Medina was the city where the Muslims lived, and it had pagan Arabs, it had a Jewish community, and it also had people that would come and frequent it during their caravan travels. So it was a resting station. Now, this particular event is that there was a group of people from the Muslim community that were tasked with going out and protecting the eastern borders of the city. Why would that be necessary? Border patrol. We hear about the border. We hear about protecting our homeland. And every community has the same type of feeling. You need to have security. You need to have protection. And Medina was no different than that. So there was a group of people tasked with protecting the eastern side of the Prophet's city. And while they were on patrol, they found a particular person. And he was basically in the wrong place at the wrong time. You guys know this expression. There is no such thing as wrong place and wrong time, because everything has been decided by God already. So if you find yourself in a place, that was the right place at the right time, even if the circumstances are not favorable. And definitely for this guy, again, looking at this story in the beginning, you're going to see how there is a turn of events. This is a man by the name of Thumama ibn Uthal. Thumama ibn Uthal actually had been traveling on a long journey. He comes from Central Arabia. He belonged to a tribe called Bani Hanifa. Bani Hanifa are a huge Arabian tribe. They happen to be in the central area in Arabia. Today, the area where Bani Hanifa is the capital city of Saudi. It's called Riyadh. Riyadh Najd. Right next to it is Wadi Bani Hanifa, where these people actually, that's their ancestral homeland. So this man basically had been far away from his familiar territory. So the patrol bring him, they arrest him, and they bring him over to the city. Now, this would be considered an enemy combatant at the time, because the enemies of the Muslims were waging war against them. So if you happen to be in the wrong territory, basically you're not supposed to trespass, and this guy was trespassing. As far as they're concerned, he comes from a hostile town, comes from a hostile tribe. They have no relationship with them. What are you doing here? We're going to take you to the city. Now we're going to see how the Muslim community, at least at the time of the Prophet, treated individuals like this. So he was a prisoner. They did not lock him up and put him in solitary confinement. They say solitary confinement is one of the worst punishments you can give a prisoner. Just keep them by themselves. Because human beings are social by their nature. They like to be around others. Loneliness, they say, is one of the #1 epidemics that cause people death and early mortality. Loneliness. Loneliness is different than being alone. You can choose to be alone, but you could be with people and feel lonely. So that's called torture. That's called punishment. They did not punish him in this way, although he was trespassing, he was in the wrong area. Clearly he was a criminal, he was breaking their law. They didn't keep him in a cell. They also did not put him in a military prison, which is what we hear right now. Again, speaking about the border, if you hear about the plight of some of the people who try to cross the border, a lot of them are treated like criminals for what? As a default. But we all know not all of them are criminals. Could there be criminal elements? Definitely. That's a fact. And we're not just talking about in America now. This is all over the world. Every country that has its neighboring land going through some type of turmoil, they're going to be expecting large waves of migrants. How do they treat these people who are trespassing their borders? Some countries are pretty civilized. They give them asylum and they take care of them. Others close the borders. Others bring them in so they can get international aid, but then they disrespect them, they mock them, they beat them up, they abuse them. So we see how people react, and this is not just in the pre-modern time, we're talking about in our day and time. Some of these people, they may be simply crossing the border and they put them in a military prison. I volunteer in prisons. I mentioned this before. They have specific prisons called immigration cells for people who have issues with their immigration. The person could be here for 40 years, doesn't have papers, they end up getting locked there. Also, a person who brand new just crossed the border could end up there. And these places are some of the least hygienic places, least protected places. There aren't many civil liberties in them, and many of them are actually contracted to private institutions. And this is a huge industry in America, unfortunately, at this time. This man was brought to the Prophet's masjid, again, the community center, the headquarters of the Muslims, and he was tied down to one of the pillars of the masjid. The masjid of the Prophet had pillars, and those pillars were made out of palm trees, whatever material they had at that time. So he was tied to one of those pillars. And the point behind this, there was an objective. First of all, the Muslims didn't really have prisons. This is a foreign concept to Islam. Second of all, there was a reason for him to be treated this way. He's a nobleman. He was a leader and a chief of that particular tribe. So the Prophet's design and designation was that he would see and he would witness and he would experience the daily life and the daily rituals of the Messenger of God and the believing community. This was an objective behind bringing him in. Last time we kind of spoke briefly about how the mosque sometimes, at the time of the Prophet, would host these homeless people, the migrants. Again, it revolves around that, and I like to use these words that are hot today. Many times people don't understand the concept of muhajirin and ansar. So I want you to utilize common words today that people would relate to. Use refugees and sponsors. Refugees who leave their homes. They may come from rich families. They may have businesses, but when they run for their lives, they're refugees. And then a refugee in a country needs a sponsor that would take care of them, and they get paired with them. They kind of put their name down for them. They help them out legally. They translate for them. This was the relationship that was in the city of Medina between the Meccan refugees and the Medinan sponsors. This is like a new political take onto these terminologies that we hold very dear. Allah mentions al-Muhajirin wal-Ansar in the Quran. These are sacred words, but they have a powerful meaning, especially if we can bring it home to things that we are experiencing. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes to this man and he tells him, "Ma indaka ya Thumama." What is it that you have? Basically, what is the matter with you? Short question, straight to the point. Now, this was not intended to be disrespectful. So this is key. So maybe the way I am expressing it may show that. But this is why these disclaimers are important. It says it was far away from any type of disrespect, any type of threat, any type of warning, any type of putting someone down, any type of being condescending. Thumama should have expected that the Prophet himself would bring him a proposal. So this is like the flip side. Someone who's coming, so I want to try to reflect over this. You would try to interrogate a person, or you tell them, you know, let's say it's the police who arrest somebody. I think the police start speaking first. And they tell him you have the right to remain silent, right? Here, the Prophet is not telling him you have the right to remain silent. He's engaging him in conversation. What do you have? What is the matter with you? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, instead of telling him what he is about to do to him, instead of reading him his whatever rights they call him and then telling him, look, if you don't do this, we're going to do that, he asks him and he tells him, you tell me what you want. And that's very important in conversations. Ask people what they want. And Thumama responds like a leader. He's a chief in his city, in his town, in his tribe. He's extremely confident with himself. He's a nobleman. So he says, "Indi khayrun ya Muhammad." I have a lot of wealth, O Muhammad. I'm basically a loaded man. Then Thumama decides, khayr, by the way, in Arabic means wealth. Many people think that it only means goodness, but it actually is a comprehensive term that means wealth, first and foremost. Then Thumama actually gives the Prophet some possibilities. What are some of the possibilities? He says, so he's kind of given him a preemptive response. He says, if you are to kill me, you're going to kill someone who has noble blood. My blood is not going to go to waste. I have big value with my people. You know why it's easy for certain people to get killed, whether it's by law enforcement or it's by different countries or different agents? Because nobody's going to go defend them. But you better not mess with what? What does America say? Hurt an American national, what are we going to do? We're going to mobilize our troops. We're going to destroy your country. Isn't that what we do? That's how America operates. So you don't mess with Americans. Maybe you may not like them, you dislike them, but they have power behind them. This is what he's saying. He's identifying himself. If you're going to mess with me, I got a big tribe behind me that's not going to let that go. وَإِن تُنْعِمْ, but if you treat me with clemency, if you treat me with honor, تُنْعِمْ عَلَى شَاكِرٍ, you're going to honor someone who's very grateful. I will appreciate it. And they say something in Arabic. They say, in akramta al-karima malaktahu, wa in akramta al-la'ima tamarrada. So the Arabs say something. They say, if you are to honor a person of honor, you will gain them for a lifetime. They'll never forget that. But if you honor someone who's despicable, all he'll do is rebel. It's not worth it. Like basically, let's say you got a dog who's trained. A trained dog is a noble dog. So you give him food, he'll never forget you. He'll be like, you know what, man, this guy is good. He'll come and defend you and this and that. That's just a dog, not even a human. You go to a rabid dog, just some dog out in the wild, you try to feed him, what is he going to do? He's going to bite you, right? He'll rebel against you. Then he says, so he gave him two possibilities. You're either going to kill me, and I got people waiting to take care of my blood. Two, you'll give me clemency, and I will be very grateful. وَإِن كُنْتَ تُرِيدُ الْمَالَ فَسَلْ مِنْهُ مَا شِئْتَ. If what you're seeking is wealth, because he sees the condition of the Muslims is that they're extremely poor at this time. They're not well off. They don't have a good budget. That's why some of their refugees are staying in the mosque. Ahlul Sufa are living there because of what? Poverty. If they had enough money to house them in an apartment, nobody would worry about that. But the community was so poor that some of the migrants were basically a burden over the country, over the community, and they had to stay in the masjid. If you want wealth, ask of it whatever you desire. The response of the Prophet ﷺ was to simply leave him alone. And he didn't take any of his options. So he gave him multiple choices, and the Prophet left him as that. And the point behind that is to leave him to wonder about the different options. Again, very, very strategic. You don't have to give answers. Somebody may come to you, give you this whole rap about something that's going on, and that's not actually their problem. Yesterday, I had a non-Muslim come visit me on campus. And he came and started asking some philosophical questions. You know, the philosophy of Islam, and what does this say, and the history, and this and that. I said, look, man, the prophets came with very simple words. Let me tell you the simple message that they had. Anyway, by the end of the meeting, he stayed for about an hour. He was crying. What we found out is the fact that he's not really looking into religion at this time. He's just in so much pain, and he has a lot of suffering that's happening in his life, and he just wants to speak to someone that he feels safe with. He has so much guilt that he's carrying that he's going to philosophize things and come up with his own religion, not because of philosophy and religion, but because of the pain that he's carrying. So the Prophet strategically here did not respond. He just let him be. He's not ready to listen yet. Just let him be. Many people think, especially men, they want to find solutions. So your wife tells you something that's happening in the house. Okay, we got to do something about it. She doesn't want a solution. All she wants is for you to listen, that's all. And that's what gets people in trouble. They eventually will tell you, if you don't get the point, I don't want you to fix this problem. Stop trying to fix everything. But that's the issue, is people don't process information correctly. So the Prophet here wanted this man to be completely preoccupied with his own thoughts, but also to observe the messenger himself and whoever is around him. And the point is that he, by seeing the community and how they operate, he's going to realize what will be my eventual destination, possibly way out. But what is the outcome? What is the outcome of this whole episode? This is a guy that wasn't planning on getting locked up, right? He just got locked up, picked up by Border Patrol. He was at the wrong time, wrong place, and he got picked up. So the Prophet is telling him without even saying it. So this is in Arabic, they call this lisanu al-hal, not lisanu al-maqal. Lisanu al-maqal is what you verbalize. I tell you X, Y, and Z. But sometimes my behavior tells you X, Y, and Z. I don't even need to say anything. So the Prophet is allowing him time to come to an understanding of what the outcome will be. Now, very important, although he's a prisoner, he had trespassed, meaning he is at fault here. This is not like someone who's completely innocent. He was tied to his pillar, but he never was mistreated. He was not abused. His honor, dignity, and integrity was not questioned. His food would be carried to him from the Prophet's houses. So that's right next door. So basically like that door, the Prophet's house is right there. When we look at the masjid, that's exactly how it looks. The homes are on that side. So the door opens and they bring the food over to this prisoner. And the point here was that the Prophet is telling him, I am feeding you from the same food that I eat. That's something important, by the way. A lot of times in different cultures, people want to treat their guests well. But the best thing you can offer your guest, if you really feel comfortable with your guest, you offer them what you have. You don't go out of your way. And because they realize your condition, but you're also telling them this is more intimate. I'm not calling in and ordering food from outside. You're going to eat what we eat. So that's basically the case here. So the Prophet is sharing from his food and his drink, considering the Prophet didn't have much food and drink in Medina. Because again, we spoke about the state of poverty that they were living in. A whole day had passed. Thumama is still tied to the pillar. he's witnessing the Prophet's treatment with his beautiful character and his beautiful ethics, and how the Prophet lived with his community. So this is something extremely important, and we don't really get to see that. The Prophet himself, now we already know he is the Imam. He is the leader. Imam means a leader. He's the leader of the community, but he's living just like any random person, just like any commoner. Meaning, he didn't look any different than them. He didn't dress differently. His living arrangement was similar to everybody else's. The whole community is right there. They see each other, and this is a guest who gets to see it as well. That's huge. 2, he notices that although the Prophet is so engaged and he has so many different responsibilities, again, we say he's a father, he's a husband, he's a grandfather, some of the things we've learned here. He's a teacher, he goes to the market, he's a military leader, he's governing, he's a judge. So he's got all these different hats that he wears, and yet at the same time, this man is witnessing him giving everything its due rights. And when he deals with someone, he gives them his undivided attention. That's huge. Because again, a lot of CEOs, they don't have time to waste. So a lot of CEOs don't even talk to their subordinates. They're like, look, I'm meeting with the ones that are right below me. I don't deal with the regular worker in the company. But the most successful companies is where you see a CEO talking to the janitor and having a personal conversation. Whatever company or whatever hierarchy you happen to be in, if you're plugged into everyone that's around, they feel more endeared to you. And that's what the Prophet excelled in doing. This man also saw the lines of the Muslims, how they stood up in lines right behind the messenger, and he was witnessing this act of formal worship and ritual, which is extremely powerful. Several times, this guy that I was telling you about, the non-Muslim, how does he end up seeing the Muslim chaplain on campus? He was in the meditation room meditating, and he saw the Muslims performing salah, and that struck up an hour-and-a-half conversation about what is Islam. And then from that, they said, well, we have somebody who can answer your questions. Come and visit him. And hopefully we'll have a relationship. Today he sent me an email. He says, I really appreciated my time. A few months earlier, we had another non-Muslim. He was sitting in the meditation room because he was homeless. And he saw the Muslims performing salah in a straight line, and he was moved emotionally. He started crying, and then he inquired. He told them, tell me about this religion. And then they brought him over to me again. So this is not something where I'm going out of my way to meet non-Muslims, but they're being attracted to Islam. How? By seeing Muslims perform their ritual in public places. And people don't realize that your public display of Islam brings people to Islam. Don't hide that. Because we're not having conversations. Not everyone is a speaker. Not everyone is, an expert in missionary work. Not everyone can engage in arguments and debates and dialogues. But you can live the teaching by yourself. Here, the Prophet, of course, he had brought this person in, and he was seeing and witnessing all of this. Something else that he saw and he witnessed and he experienced was the recitation of the Quran from the lips of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The last 2 weeks we've been talking about Mu'adh reciting the Quran. So they say, imagine what it must have sounded like for the Prophet himself to recite the Quran. Sometimes actually he would ask some of his students and he would say, recite the Quran to me. And they would feel very awkward. They'd say, how can we recite it to you and it's being revealed to you? He's like, I like to hear it from other people too. So just imagine the Messenger of God is reciting. This is a pure Arab, meaning this man who's a prisoner, so he recognizes the words and their meanings. But you don't have to be an Arab to recognize the power of the Quran. Bring anyone and let them listen to this speech of God, and they will be affected emotionally. Maybe they won't understand the meaning, but it will have an impact on them. So again, Muslims should not shy away from sharing that with people. Play the Quran in your car. Play it in your house. Let people be exposed to it. It's good for you, and it's good for others around you. All of these images that he's seeing before his eyes were basically arrows, sweet arrows, letters that are going into his heart. And the next day, the Messenger of God comes to him again. Now look at this. The Messenger of God is not very persistent. The whole when you hear about interrogations and how they treat people that they lock up, they let them really live a miserable life. They say, I hear about this. So the most recent experiences were some people went to Jerusalem and then how they were treated at the border. So basically, they already have a file of your whole life story before they stop you. But then they ask you to mention your whole life story. So you sit for a few hours telling them your whole life story. Then they ask you to write it down. You write it down. Then another person comes and asks you the same questions again, right? Here, the Prophet didn't tell people, go and nag this guy. Go and bother him. Go and intimidate him. Go and make him feel miserable. He's our guest. That's what was said in practice. We're just going to let him see what we're doing. We're not going to change anything. We don't know that the Prophet ever made an announcement and he says, guys, we got guests coming today. Let's clean up our act. Isn't that what we have to do here when we have an open house? Of course we do. It's like the troublemakers. Brother, can you please don't show up? Please, we don't need trouble today. We got a bunch of guests. When the people from college came a few weeks ago, I think you guys did it in a way where it was conspicuous. It was a time where there was no salah, right? Because we're going to have 200 guests. We just want them to come in peace. But how about you invite a big delegation on Friday? The Prophet had trained his community where people knew, look, if this is a guest, you honor the guest. You give them their space. This is important, by the way, because here, let's say we have somebody who comes in wandering into our building. Everyone and their mother is going to give them a lesson. We don't wait to see who is the assigned individual to usher people in. We have an office manager for a reason. We have brothers who have more expertise in dealing with non-Muslims. They know every single person is going to come, hey, how can I help you? Can't help them, just leave them alone. That's the best way to help. Just get out the way. So the Prophet comes to him the next day and he says again, مَا عِنْدَكَ يَا ثُمَامَ, what is it that you have? Thumama, the second time around, does not give the same answer. He keeps it short and he says, مَا قُلْتُ لَكَ, whatever I told you already. إِن تُنْعِمْ تُنْعِمْ عَلَى شَاكِرٍ, if you honor, if you treat me with honor, you're treating someone who is very grateful. And he didn't say the other options this time around. So remember, the first time he was tense. What did he start with? If you kill me, got my tribe behind me. But this time he just says, if you treat me good, you're treating someone who's honorable and someone who will be grateful. It says, he felt comfortable when he noticed that the Prophet did not feel a sense of revenge when dealing with him. The Prophet could have made a lesson out of this guy. How dare you cross our border? Don't you know that we're in a state of war with the rest of the world? He could have done all types of things and it would have been rationalized. Homeland security. When something happens to your country, all the laws go, they have a state of emergency. They no longer deal with international law. But the Prophet here told him that in his words and in his actions, that I'm not interested in revenge. I'm not going to physically abuse you. I'm not going to take your money. Those are the two options that he had the first day. And that's why now the man within himself, he realized, look, man, this guy's not interested in money and not interested in hurting me physically. If he would have hurt me, he would have hurt me yesterday. But they didn't treat me, or they didn't mistreat me. So he summarized his answer with the thing that he felt the most likely response of the Prophet would be. And then the Messenger of God leaves him alone so he can live another day in the school of the Prophet. It's very good to have experiential knowledge. Many people think if we want to have dialogue with non-Muslims, we need to give them a lecture. We just need to treat them like humans and allow them to see us as humans. But we shouldn't say, we're just like you guys, because we're not. So they should see us performing worship the way we do it. And they're like, wow, I never seen anyone do that. This thing that you do, you bow down, you put your face on the ground. Who does stuff like that? You do this 5 times a day? That's what impacts people. But at the same time, we can still break bread, we can still communicate, we can still talk and have fun and so forth. So this man had another opportunity to live for another day in the school of the Prophet Muhammad, so he can see some more. And so he can witness other lessons and he can hear some more as well. Third day comes about and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes again and he asks The same exact question. ما عندك يا ثمامة. What is it that you have, O Thumama? Thumama says, I have what I said to you before. And he stops it right there. He didn't even give the option of, if you treat me well, I'll be grateful. And the point behind that was, so here he's dealing with the Prophet's generosity. He's basically telling him, I don't have any requests right now. I'm just going to let you handle this situation. So then the messenger of God says, release Thumama. Release Thumama. Meaning, he could have done that from day one. But that was the arrogance of this chief, that he felt he's in charge and he's in control. Let me tell you what I want. A, B, C. This is like, I went to a dealership a few days ago, so I have a new experience to share. So my brother is with me. I don't know how to do this stuff, but he tells me you basically have to like bargain with them and bring them down and tell them this and tell them that. But he has like a discount that he came with. He's like, look, I know exactly what your invoice is, so we're starting from here. We're starting from how much it cost you. How much money do you want to make basically out of it? But the thing is, in the end of the day, they're the ones who have to sell you. So you have to wait for their mercy, kind of. You're at their mercy. The Prophet here is just allowing him to express himself. He expresses himself the first day, the second day. The third day, now the guy gets it. And he's like, you know what? I'll just let you handle your business. You decide. And the Prophet says, just let him go. And sure enough, they release him. When we say he was tied to a pillar, it doesn't mean that he was tied like a dog. It just means he wasn't able to have complete freedom. But again, he wasn't in a cell. Somebody may say, well, how was he able to relieve himself? Well, I'm sure they would take care of that, because you can't relieve yourself in the mosque, right? Because this is sacred ground. So any of these ideas that may come to people's minds, he was basically taken care of, but at the same time, he was confined. He didn't have his freedom. And basically, he had prophetic clemency without any conditions. Usually when, let's say, people get released, so when they lock them up in these immigration centers, I can only imagine, but I think they make him sign some type of document that says, I'll never come back to America again. I won't cross the border again. And clearly, this document doesn't mean anything, because most of these people are repeat offenders. They've done this before, and they're going to come back. They've had their family here. They catch him, they don't catch the rest of the family. They're going to come back and be with their wife and kids. Anyway, the Prophet did not give him any conditions, but he had spent 3 days in the Prophet's mosque, and he had heard and he had seen different images of the Prophet's life. He listened to passages from the Quran, the revelation and the recitation, the speech of God. And when he went out of that mosque, he had a completely different outlook to life than the way he came in. So what he did was he found an area. Again, Medina at the time was full of palm trees, orchards, fields. He went to an area nearby and he bathed. He took a full bath. Then he came back to the masjid on his own this time, on his own accord. And he stood right before the messenger of God and he says the statement of faith. I testify that there is nothing worthy of worship except for the one true God, and I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God. O Muhammad, I'm telling you by God, there was no face on earth that was more disliked and hated by me like your face. And today your face is the most beloved face to me. There was no religion in existence more hated to me than your religion, and today it is the most beloved religion to me. There was no city on earth that was more hated to me than your city, and today your city is the most beloved city to me. He says, your horsemen picked me up, and I had intended to go for Umrah. So he's from Central Arabia. They would usually go down to Medina, and then they would head south to Mecca for pilgrimage. He's an Arab, a pagan Arab nonetheless, but they also performed Umrah. He's like, this is my intention. That's what I wanted to do when I got caught, when I crossed the border. So what do you think I should do now? So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam responds in the following way. He says to him, he congratulates him, and he says, I think you should go and perform your Umrah. That was your intention. You should follow your intention. Continue with that intention. Now you have the proper beliefs. And Thumama goes to Mecca, He performs the main rituals, which is to go around the Kaaba, go between Safa and Marwa, and then he decides to announce and to vocalize his Islam. Where is he doing that? The wrong city. The city that kicked the Muslims out, that made them into refugees. And he did that in spite of the people of Mecca. And then one of the people asked him and they said, did you leave your religion? Did you apostate? Did you turn your back on God? That's what converts to Islam hear all the time. And Thumama says, no, rather I have submitted and I followed the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he makes a promise to them. He says, from today on, you will not receive any grains from Yamama. Yamama was this fertile area in Central Arabia that offered grains to Mecca. Mecca has no plants. They require other people to bring them food. Mecca just has the animals that they graze, but they have no natural resources. He says, I'm not going to send you a morsel of grain until the Messenger of God allows it. So he already told them basically who's in charge. Although they know him as a chief of his town, he says the Messenger of God will decide. Then he goes back to his people, and since he was a chief, he told them, guys, we're having an economic boycott of Mecca. Don't take anything to them. Don't bring them any food. And what this did was, of course, hurt Quraysh. It hurt them. This is like basically economic embargoes really hurt people. It isolates them and it makes them do a lot of weird things. Right now we're hearing again in the news, North Korea. As soon as this guy decides to put his nuclear stuff away, that country is going to get opened up to the world. And people are going to have more food and more things to enjoy life instead of living in misery. So basically Quraysh now is feeling the hurt. So then they wrote to the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they said, we are related to you. And you came with the command to connect family ties. They're reminding him of his own message. So then the Messenger of God wrote to Thumama and he says, let your people give the Meccans grains. And the grains of Yamama returned back to Mecca with the command and the instruction of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now we're going to have some of the lessons here, and there's different amazing things to this. I just don't want to lose track because there's a few things that were in my mind about how the positive treatment influences people. Yesterday we heard from a brother, he works for Islamic Relief USA. And this organization, of course, most people know that they have operations in 60 countries around the world, but USA means they go to disaster-struck areas in America. So in the last few years, we've had disasters, hurricanes, fires, and stuff like that. So they go to these disastrous areas and they help the communities rebuild and so forth. They send teams of volunteers. They said they went to this, I can't remember the exact state, but they were placed with, they partnered them up with a team of rural area in Pennsylvania, and it was a church that actually did not want to work with the Muslims. But they were there for about a week working with each other, and then this old man from the church, he went and tells the pastor of the church that was hosting the program, and he says, you know, I can't believe I had this negative impression of the Muslims, and I lived my life basically thinking that these people are devils, but they're helping rebuild the homes of our brethren. And these people that we're helping are Christian people. They're not even Muslim people. So basically he breaks down and he starts crying. Another organization or another brother mentioned another thing that we have in Southern California, where some of the masajid, when the fires were going last summer, some of the masajid were registered as evacuation centers. May Allah reward whoever did that. And basically the particular area they were talking about, Yorba Linda, they had some non-Muslim protesters several years ago against a charity organization and a charity event. And what's amazing is this particular gentleman, he ended up being evacuated to the mosque. Now he had no clue that he was going to the mosque. The guy that picked him up, so basically they assign him to somebody that comes and picks him up. The Muslim guy's name is Paul, so he didn't think he's a Muslim. And then basically he drives them all the way to Garden Grove Masjid. Garden Grove Masjid is like this, but it's bigger and it's obviously a mosque. This is not obviously a mosque. And the guy's like, where am I? From the outside. He's shocked. He refuses to leave his car. So they think he's just stressed out. They have no clue about the background story. They think he's just traumatized. You know, his house is on fire probably. And they try to convince him. They brought other brothers. Brother, how can we help you? They brought him food. They're just trying to make him relax. And then he breaks down crying. He comes out of the car and he sees the same brother that he was protesting against several years ago. They basically hug each other and they cry, and a reporter from the LA Times actually captures that moment. So this is on the LA Times. So what did they do? Just witnessing what the Muslims did in their proper behavior. That's the story here, is that this stuff can still happen in our times. Although a lot of people freak out, Islamophobia this, border wall that. Just let's do positive work and let our actions do the talking. Like the Prophet's actions did the talking. They didn't converse with him. If you remember anything in the story, was there ever a speech? Let's tell you about Islam, Mr. What's his name? Thumama. Did they even address him about Islam? No conversation about the religion. Just see us in action. See how we behave, how we treat one another. The very first lesson here, it says, the powerful personality of Thumama and the honor and dignity that he had, although he was standing before the Messenger of God as a prisoner, tied down to a pillar, and he was waiting for the different choices and possibilities in death, basically. How is he going to get killed? Is he going to get decapitated? Is he going to be tortured? What is going to be the method of his death? He thinks in his mind, but with that, he was still steadfast and strong. That shows you how much honor he had. He wasn't scared. He wasn't terrified. And that's how he spoke to the Prophet ﷺ. So he gave him the options. And he was very strong and passionate about them. He didn't see that, he was a weak person. And the Prophet ﷺ actually recorded that mentally, that this man is a man of honor. This is a person who's got high self-esteem. We're never going to hurt that. And that's something very important. Many times we have people coming to our community and then we expect them to be like a janitor the next day. It doesn't work like that. You have to honor people and keep them where they're at. أَنزِلُوا النَّاسَ مَنَازِلَهُم. Honoring people is something from Islam. Yes, everybody is to be treated equally, but certain people deserve special respect. So this particular personality trait of his, this power and dignity and high self-esteem, became a key while he became Muslim. He kept that. He didn't lose that. And that's the importance of telling people, look, when you embrace Islam, don't lose your personality. Refine yourself, but don't lose your personality. Your personality is supposed to shine. Islam accepts you the way you are. Just work on developing anything that may be negative. But some people, what they end up doing, and this happens in our community, you have a convert who's a white American. He starts speaking English with an accent. It's like, brother, where are you from? He's like, I'm from here. Why are you talking like you just came from like Indonesia or Pakistan? You sound like an immigrant. What happened to you? He basically has changed himself completely. That's not appropriate. You got to remain true to yourself. And the Muslim community also has to remind people that stay true to yourself. Don't get excited. Oh, look, he looks so cute. He's dressed like us. He's not a toy. It's not a doll. It's not a talent show. You dress him up and, oh, look, he's so cute. Sister's so cute. You look Chinese today. I'm not Chinese. And every day we change them up, right? And then we teach them the different foods too. That's not part of Islam. Just let people be. And the Prophet here, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, showcases that. And that's why the man kept his strength after Islam. So as soon as he embraced Islam, he goes to a hostile environment, which is Mecca. And what does he do? Most new Muslims are terrified of showcasing their Islam. Why do you think that's the case? Because they're not empowered in the Muslim community. How would they be empowered in their community of origin? They come and they have no voice in our community. And then we tell them, yeah, you got to tell your family about your Islam. You got to share this message, because if you don't, that's going to... The Prophet here did not tell him, go showcase Islam, but he preserved the guy's dignity. So the guy on his own, he goes and he's like, you guys not getting no food from us. Self-esteem. So he said that I'm with the Messenger of God. He made a decision and he prevented them from the the produce of his town. What he was doing though, it wasn't just a financial boycott. He wanted to teach him a lesson. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to decide your fate. I want you guys to know who's in charge. You guys drove him out of his city. He's in charge of your food. We're going to learn that lesson in a little bit. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam empowered people, preserved their dignity and honor for them. He allowed them to excel in their special personality traits. And that's why these personality traits come back and support the community of Islam once these people embrace Islam. Number two, when Thumama became Muslim, he was completely satisfied and he was completely convinced. Although the Prophet ﷺ did not really invite him to Islam. We said he didn't give him a lecture and he didn't tell him, if you embrace Islam, I'll let you go. He didn't bargain with him. There was none of that. However, it was Thumama's complete conviction that Islam is the truth, which happened by seeing the daily schedule of the Muslim community. And I'm going to do a plug-in here. I have a program called The Prophetic Day. I think it's about 15 hours on video on IOK Media. Check it out. See how the Prophet spent his 24 hours. It's very powerful because that's how you're going to imagine how this man experienced these 3 days in the Prophet's city. He got a dose of that for 3 days. He saw them how they behaved in their headquarters in the mosque. He heard the message of the Quran while the Prophet was engaged in worship. And he would hear him behaving and acting in a way that convinced him that this man is speaking the truth. The most important thing with a messenger is that the messenger can prove that they are truthful. Once the messenger proves that they're truthful, people will accept them. And this man saw the truth in the Prophet's behavior, that he would not make this up. And that's why his faith was strong. His faith was unshakable. What's interesting here, you guys may have heard about Yamama. What's Yamama known for in Islamic history? Banu Hanifa, what are they known for? Right after the Prophet dies, there was a false prophet called what? Musaylama. Musaylama was in Yamama. Yamama was the most tragic event after the life of the messenger, which took out most of the people who had the Quran memorized. And the reason we have the Quran documented in paper form is because most of the people who had the Quran memorized got killed, and that's how that idea came about, is make sure that we preserve it because we don't know how long that's going to last. That's part of the story of the preservation of the Quran. Thumama was from that same city. Most of his people apostated from Islam. They left Islam and they followed this false prophet. But he stayed firm and he actually fought against his own people to bring them back to the fold of Islam. That's something very powerful. Although he didn't spend much time with the Prophet. Number three, Thumama forced Quraysh to utilize the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to ask him to intercede in order for them to receive food support from Yamama. Quraysh, what they did was remind the Prophet and tell him, you came with a message that connects family ties and takes care of the needy. Now, look at this. The Prophet it could have been very easily done that he could respond to them and tell them, you guys were the very first people to break family ties because I'm your relative. Remember, Quraysh is related to the Prophet. So a lot of people, again, they hate the Meccans or they hate Quraysh. They don't remember that these people are the Prophet's family. This is like one family having internal issues. The Prophet didn't tell them, well, you guys are my family and you started this beef. He didn't remind them of that. He also didn't tell them, remember how you guys had an economic boycott for 3 years against Bani Hashim? Bani Hashim was the immediate clan of the Prophet, and they weren't all Muslims. So it was the Muslim community and their non-Muslim allies and supporters. They were all under economic embargo for 3 years. What are they called? Not concentration camps? The place where they kept the Japanese, what are they called? Internment camps. So Banu Hashim stayed for 3 years in an internment camp. He could have reminded them, remember when you guys stopped feeding us? You know what they used to eat for these 3 years? Whatever bushes grow in the desert. They said when they started using the restroom at that time, it would be like what goats do when goats defecate, because they're eating the same food as goats. They suffered tremendously. By the way, it was the aftermath of that that got Khadija and Abu Talib dead. That's how they died. It was due to the difficulties. Right after the embargo ends, they pass away because they just suffered tremendously. And Khadija was what? A noble woman, a rich woman. But all that wealth was gone because of the economic embargo. So the Prophet could have told them, you know, this happened. Revenge. You guys made me lose my... The most beloved people to him was his uncle and Khadija. And we spoke about that before here. But he did not remind them of that. He also could have reminded them, you guys drove us out of our city. You made us turn into refugees. And you didn't remember that we are related to you. How are you asking me about keeping family ties now? But the Prophet didn't do any of that. And all he did was tell Thumama, please bring back the food to Mecca. That's called prophetic character. That's the reason why we study this man. You know, this is not just, you know, love your enemy type of thing. This is way beyond that. This is actions, not just words. Because some people say love your enemy, but they call you enemy. How can you like, the word doesn't make sense. If you think somebody's your enemy, that means you're in a war. But the Prophet never said that. His behavior, however, challenged that status quo. The Prophet ﷺ did not have this, you know, this is a particular carnal desire to have revenge. Whenever I have the ability to beat someone down, I'll do it. That's part of the animal instinct within people. But the Prophet did not deal with people based on their standards. He dealt with them based on his standards. This is important. Let's say financially. Somebody may say, well, you know, I have the opportunity to cheat the bank and to cheat this financial institution because this is how they operate. They all cheat. Let me cheat. That's not prophetic. The Prophet says, I'll still do the right thing. And this is why the Prophet, his goal, his target was bringing people closer to the religion of God and not turning them away. And this particular behavior of the Prophet is going to affect the hearts of the people of Mecca. Why do you think the people of Mecca eventually became Muslim? Because they're like, this guy is not after our wealth. This guy had the opportunity to kill us and he let us free. He had the opportunity to have this financial embargo and he still gave us food. All these things affect people. They're like, we're taking notes here. Not everybody's going to be a staunch enemy. Although it didn't affect all of them, but affected some of them. And this is going to allow them to embrace the faith eventually. So that's the story of Thumama. May Allah be pleased with Thumama. Although we don't really know much about him, but this particular story is definitely powerful. And the key here, the takeaway message is, if we have guests coming to the house, they're not prisoners. But I'm just saying, like the worst possibility is for you to have a prisoner. And we don't have that opportunity. If people come over, what are they going to see in our behavior as a community? Who can they talk to if they have questions? What have we done to prepare ourselves? That's a very important question. We should consider that. Hopefully our community can talk about that and make sure that the masjid is vibrant in a way where it's safe for people to come in, and then people are allowed to see us in action, living Islam, taking care of one another, caring for one another, being empathetic. We ask Allah to guide us all to do that. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. We ask you, Allah, to give us the best of this life and the best of the next life, and to protect us from your anger and from the fire. ربنا أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. We ask you, Allah, to help us to remember you and to mention you at all times, to be grateful to you for all your blessings and to worship you in the best of ways. We ask you, Allah, to make our masajid, our mosques, and our community centers places where people find guidance and find safety and find comfort and find love and find support that they're seeking, whether they happen to be from our community or outside of our community. We ask you to allow us to live and model the behavior of the Messenger Muhammad, so whenever we interact with people, they see us prophet-like. They see us the way you want us to be, and hopefully we can help them in whatever condition they are in. We ask you, Allah, to guide our hearts, to help us to fix our mistakes and to own up to any faults that we have and to seek your forgiveness. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. Our Lord and Master, we've wronged ourselves. We confess to you and to no one else. If you don't forgive us and have mercy on us, we'll be amongst the losers. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sallam. We ask you to bless the Messenger Muhammad bless his family and his righteous followers until the last day, and to shower them with protection and grace. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Allah is far above any imperfection. We praise him, we testify that he's the only one deserving of worship. We seek his forgiveness and we repent to him. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.